Hey all, here OS Reviews. Today we're taking a closer look at the North Edge Float. This is a hybrid smartwatch that combines a analog style watch face with a real moving hand, and there's a small OLED panel that's underneath that can display some additional information like steps, your heart rate, and basic notifications. There are a few reasons why hybrid smartwatches can be an alternative to a traditional one. For one, battery life is going to be longer since the display itself is much smaller and more discreet, so it fits in more like a regular watch. On the flip side, I would say the functionality is also not as complete as something like a Apple Watch or an Android Wear smartwatch since the screen size is more limited. Closer, I'd say, to a fitness tracker, giving you steps, calories, a few sports tracking modes, and that's more or less it. It uses, of course, Bluetooth to connect to both iOS or Android to sync the information. It's rated to be 5 ATM for waterproofing. There is a side of the screen that you can tap on with your fingers to wake up the OLED display. Through the app, you can also sync over the weather information, as well as activate a stopwatch and find your phone if you've lost it. The watch dials also claim to be glow in the dark, so if it absorbs enough sunlight during the day, you can still make it out when you are looking at it at night. Inside of the packaging, we have, of course, the watch itself, which we'll take a closer look at in a moment. There's also the typical assortment of user manuals, and there's also the charging cable, which in this case is using a cradle that doesn't need to be plugged in. You can set it on the watch basically anywhere, and it will begin to charge. Essentially, the entire outer parameters are conductive, so you can, again, put it into any position as long as these two pins are touching the metal, and it will just work for charging, which is pretty neat. Afterwards, it will last for about 2 weeks or 14 days before you need to recharge it again. So again, that's pretty good compared to a full-blown smartwatch like an Apple Watch that you have to charge nightly, but that's also kind of similar to other fitness trackers. Now here's a quick size comparison against something like Xiaomi's Mi Band 5. You can really see the size difference there. This is definitely a bulky, hefty feeling watch. It's similar to other large smartwatches such as the Mobvoi TicWatch Pro in the sense that it weighs quite a bit. Definitely feels very premium and well constructed, but perhaps if you have smaller hands or wrists, it can also feel a bit on the large side. So that's something to keep in mind. Now, a closer look at the design, we have a tempered glass material in the front that is resistant to scratches. You can keep 2 different time zones on the watch. You can pull this prong out and kind of move the crown key here to change the watch's time yourself. Right now, the time here is in PST or LAX time zone, so this is what it's being shown. But you can also twist the crown manually. It makes a very satisfying mechanical click to change it to a different time zone. And remind yourself that the time that you're looking at is for that particular location in the world, compared to the digital clock, which will be synced according to your phone's time. So you can show a different time on the digital display and another one on the analog if you choose to have 2 different time zones. Otherwise, the body of the watch itself is made out of a solid chunk of aluminum, so it feels incredibly sturdy, definitely feels more premium than the price would suggest, which, by the way, it sells for under 60 bucks, sometimes goes on sale for around $50 or so, which is not bad at all. On the rear here, we have just the optical heart rate sensor. It says North Ridge Float, and the watch bands themselves are also swappable. If anything, I'd say that the tempered glass screen here, which is domed and curves off at the edges, is a little bit conductive to fingerprints. Otherwise, we can see again the time information, as well as if you're connected using Bluetooth, the battery, the date. Once more, here will tell you your number of steps that you've walked, converted to calories burned, your distance converted, as well as your heart rate, which you can set up to take an automatic measurement every hour, or tap and hold to begin a manual measurement, which takes about 30 seconds to complete. The accuracy of the heart rate measurement is pretty decent, and compared to other fitness trackers from Xiaomi and Huawei, it seems to be about in line. Sometimes it starts off a little bit on the high side, but after a few seconds, it comes down and becomes very similar on average. And you can also start a stopwatch here, and the entire watch will vibrate to give you that tactile sensation. Tap here to pause it, tap again to resume, and the controls do feel pretty intuitive. Long hold to leave that particular menu. Here is the sport mode. Now, as far as sports tracking is concerned, it is pretty basic. Basically, when it's turned on, the heart rate will be continuously measuring, so you know your fluctuations in heart rate second to second, which is pretty neat. However, this watch does not have a built-in GPS chip, so if you want to track your location on a map, you still need to connect it to your smartphone and then use your phone's GPS. Even if it is very basic, and you can essentially just know your cadence, your calories, your distance converted, and that's pretty much it. So it pretty much works best for running and jogging outdoors, but it's still nice to see. Now, a few other slight cons, I'd say. For one, although the glow-in-the-dark dials do work, they're a little on the dim side, and the glow-in-the-dark effect fades the longer you are in darkness. But I sometimes wish there would be kind of a backlight LED feature that you can tap on to shine a light for a few seconds. That would have been a nice added bonus, I'd say. Even if this display here runs out of juice, the watch itself takes up so little power to move the analog hands that it can continue to run even if this main display is powered off for up to 1 year. Now here is the companion app. It's called Smart King, and it is a very generic app just because of how basic it is in terms of functions. But once you're connected, you can see the battery percentage remaining on the watch, and you can also see your steps that you've completed in the day, as well as in a ring, how much you've made in terms of progress out of your target. You can also see at what points in time you were most active, and that's pretty much it. If I tap on here, you can also see the information for the previous day, as well as the averages for the entire week and for the entire month. Same thing goes with the exam. This is just for heart rate, basically. You can see your last measurement, and in this wave pattern, you can see other points in time during the day, how your heart rates kind of stacked up when the measurements were made. Now, under training, this is what you would use if you want to have your phone act as a GPS for tracking your location. This is where you'll see your sessions for sports and jogging. This does also track your sleep in terms of light versus deep sleep patterns, although it works only at night. So between the hours of, say, 11 p.m. and 8 a.m., if you're sleeping, it will kind of track that, and it's decent in terms of its accuracy and effectiveness. But if you're taking naps throughout the day, unlike, say, the Honor Band, it won't really delineate between that if you're sleeping at noon, for instance. You can go and tweak things like set up various alarms, and it will kind of ring and vibrate to wake you up. You can also find the smartwatch here. That will prompt the watch here to basically vibrate. You can tap there to notify that it's been found. You can also take a photo using the watch, similar to a selfie remote. You can also do things like change the different types of notifications that are going to pass through. Notifications are very basic though. It's going to scroll along the display since the size here is so small, so it takes a few moments to get used to. You can also turn on raise your hand to wake motion and raise it to your face. So it's going to be an auto wake function. So that's more or less it as far as our hands-on review of the North Edge Float. Hybrid smartwatches are still relatively niche, but it could still fit well for a demographic that's interested in getting a smartwatch that is built really well and looks super classy and professional, but adds a sprinkle of smart features underneath, disguised in the form of a regular watch. So if interested in something like this, you can check out more details in the links down below, but for now that's been our video. Thanks for watching here at OS Reviews. That's been the North Edge Float Hybrid Smartwatch.